EPA opened a federal civil rights investigation over the Jackson water crisis. The NAACP has accused the Mississippi Departments of Health and Environmental Quality of discrimination under the Civil Rights Acts. Officials say the majority Black population there in Jackson has received substandard support for its water infrastructure and treatment programs. The EPA is also looking into whether the state's management of the water crisis was racially or politically motivated.
This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for November 16th, 2022.
You're on mute.
Welcome, beloved community. We are back again with yet another installment of the Water Wednesdays webcast. And today we are here, as always, with my co-host Valerie Jean Blakely.
Hi, everyone.
And our behind the scenes guide, Lou Novak. And today we have the pleasure that I'm just finding out of someone from my home state of Louisiana that is here to talk to us about the massive water crisis that is going on in Jackson, Mississippi. Mr. Keree Blanks from the Water Collective. He's the program assistant for the Water Collective. Thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate it.
Oh, thank y'all for having me. I was excited to come on and talk about the stuff they have going on in Jackson. So
Yeah, it's such an important conversation to have, because really once something like most water crises, once they slip out of the news headlines, people really stop paying attention to them and understanding what's going on unless you're really intentionally invested in it. And so it was really important to us, for our learners to have to kind of understand this. And it's a short show, so I'm gonna jump right into the meat and potatoes of it so that we can get the information out there. I don't want to assume that everybody knows what happened. So maybe could you give us just a little bit of background of like the history of what happened, so folks can get to that, and then we'll talk about what's going on now.
Yeah, for sure. So the kind of shorthand of how did Jackson end up where they are now is that it's a majority Black city. So their population has been about 82% Black since I want to say like the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself has led to, from the larger state government, a little bit of a neglect. I say neglect. They've been overlooked. And their water infrastructure has been severely outdated, mismanaged, and understaffed, especially since the 90s, since the 80s. So this has really been
meant from the community.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a snowball effect of things have gotten worse and worse over time, and the state government has refused to allocate proper funding to get things repaired. They've refused to fund schooling and training to get the staff that they do have to have the certain qualifications to maintain everything. So it's just been kind of like a pile-on effect of different issues that led to their water infrastructure being so degraded to the point it is now, where earlier in the year in August, the Pearl River, which runs around Jackson, they had a severe rain, and with the severe rain, similar to how we get in New Orleans, we get a couple inches of rain over hours. The city's flooded in about a couple hours. They had a similar situation where they had prolonged raining and the river overflown, and their drainage system was overwhelmed and flooded. There were complete plants that were just, you couldn't even get to certain sections because everything was flooded, and the response time was very long because everything was understaffed. And then, there's nobody particularly keeping a close eye on Jackson. So the problem just was, it was able to just get worse and worse over time.
Detroit, Nicole, the similarities between Jackson and Detroit right now. That you just, in Detroit, we 80% Black city. prominently Black city, very diverse, but still 80% Black. Total divestment, water infrastructure, school infrastructure, the whole 9 yards. Took emergency management, where they tried to take every asset from us that mattered, our water system, everything. But then the last 2 years, unprecedented flooding. Like, we would get this, they wouldn't be long prolonged rains, but all of a sudden the whole sky would just open up and dump out, and it flooded the whole city, and it wasn't ready. I mean, the water infrastructure, there was too much concrete, right? Just wasn't ready. The similarities, like, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, he's telling Detroit's story too. And certainly the divestment, right, Nicole?
Especially in our sewer systems just are overtaxed, and we're not capable of dispersing all the water that was coming down in our neighborhoods, on our expressways. So we had issues where one of our expressway thoroughfares was completely engulfed in flood water, and it was forcing back up into people's homes. Several people in my community especially had severe sewer backups into their basements. And so, yeah, we see similarities. I also understand exactly what you're talking about with Louisiana, because I came here to Michigan, Katrina, and it's like, okay, I'm right back in the midst of all those issues that seem to just water. So yeah, I completely understand what's going on. Yeah.
I mean, it's, I think it's very poignant that that's happening in both places. They're prominently Black places. It seems really, like systematic environmental racism.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I was having technical difficulties there for a minute.
No,
do you want to
notice also Jackson? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nicole.
Oh no, I was wondering in Jackson, I noticed that in predominantly Black cities, when issues happen, they always talk about our resilience. Have you been hearing like the government talking about how resilient the people are in Jackson, which always used to be a positive for me, but now I associate it with the fact that usually means because we're resilient, our government is going to do what they really need to do to mitigate issues.
I 100% agree. That's a hallmark of New Orleans is, it's a resilient place and we can handle anything. But should we have to handle everything?
Right.
That's
terrible things, and now everybody got PTSD from no water and wondering what their next meal are going to look like. Oh yeah, thanks for telling us we're resilient instead of actually helping, instead of actually chipping in and doing something that actually would help.
Yeah, that verbiage is definitely a lot of Mississippi's legislators, the governor, they're definitely throwing that catchphrase around. Oh, the people of Jackson are resilient. We know they'll make it through. You haven't been there. You don't know that.
And a lot of people don't make it through and won't make it through. When they shut off whole neighborhoods in Detroit, and they shut off my 86-year-old neighbor down the street. She was out without water for 2.5 weeks before we got her water on. And she got so sick a year later, she died. She never recovered from it. So that whole resilience thing is something they tell themselves to make themselves feel better. Like, we can do the shittiest stuff to these people and they got no recourse, but they're so resilient. No.
I think that they think that because they're so financially secure, that they just want to make it seem like, well, our whole community, our whole area is just so resilient. These people financially will bounce back, when a lot of these people were not financially stable prior to this even occurring. It doesn't fall on deaf ears that this hits in predominantly neighborhoods of color, and that a lot of these people are at or below the poverty level.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So can you give us, can you tell us what's happening on the ground? Your email yesterday explained so much. And I was immediately intrigued to talk about it. So you want to tell us what's happening on the ground as a result to what happened initially?
Yeah. So we know initially when everything first happened in August and like September, and it was all in the headlines and everybody was, donating and doing fundraisers and sending water and everything. We're out of that phase of where they need immediate water resources. So we're kind of out of the phase where we need to be sending them, water and toiletries and everything. And so they have in place, they've patchworked, band-aided the system to where it's stable now. So we've moved into the phase of, okay, what's the long-term solution?
Right.
And their mayor, Mayor Lunumba, if I'm pronouncing his name correct, he is to the sentiments of the fastest plan that'll work, I'll go along with it. And so what they have done is they've put out these RFPs, requests for proposals from private companies to come in and manage and control and direct their water infrastructure. And
because that always works out good.
Right.
First step to privatization.
Exactly. So they have the deadline just passed for them to take in bids from all these private companies of how much they'll need and what they can come in and do. And so they kept that process completely out of the public. The local residents, no one can find out what companies are putting in bids to control their water. They are not releasing the information to the public. Though, as far as we know, the process to put in bids. So now we know they're in the process of deciding, well, we'll go with this private company over the next. That's kind of the process the local government is going in, and the which is like, it's like a whole thing of this. There's no transparency in the process, and so what they've done, to add onto that to kind of make everything seem not as bad as it is well, they've hired 4 out-of-state highly certified workers to come in and operate the plant from this private company out of California. So, which is such a, on surface, it sounds good as, okay, you're bringing in skilled workers to help your understaffed workers manage the plants in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
But the budgets that they are paying for these out-of-town highly skilled workers,
could have trained somebody else.
Exactly. Why not invest that money into your current workers and, pay to have people from Jackson get that training to be able to work there instead of outsourcing?
Right. And what we're going to have to do to fight for to rebuild the whole infrastructure, that they're not bringing, people from, why shouldn't the citizens who have been so harmed get access to that, those resources, and that education should be given to them for free after everything they've been through. They should be the ones being hired. All of those things we see, it never makes any sense. You can tell it's just people reaching out to their buddies from wherever, like, here, there's an opportunity, instead of actually thinking.
But again, it was destroyed, because here's the thing. When you look at them bringing in outside people, you have to calculate in funding for them to have a place to stay while they're doing work, transportation costs, all kind of accommodations and amenities for that one group of people or that one person coming in from as a private worker, when you could take that same amount and possibly thoroughly train, 3 times the number of people, if not more, in their community. And then these are people who have a vested interest in the community, because I'm very big on that when it comes to issues like this, and or police investing, because I feel when you live in a community, you have a more vested interest in what goes on in that community. It's not just, oh, I'm going to do my job and leave, you know? And I think we saw that in Louisiana as well, where there were several people who had houses repaired and houses built in neighborhoods, and they didn't even take the time to realize that they needed to have humidity treated wood because it's Louisiana. And because it's like, well, I threw up a house, good for me. I rebuilt a community, good for me, and now I'm leaving and I'm going back to the East Coast or the West Coast. And if the house falls apart, it's not my problem, you know. So I think it definitely is more important to the community when it's people from the community.
Yeah, definitely. That's Dave. I'm pretty sure even a fraction of the cost that they're paying to put up these 4 outsourced workers, you could take half that to give promotions to your 2 workers. They have 2 workers who have been working 80-hour work weeks. They haven't received any, there's no bump in their pay. They haven't gotten any, assurances that, hey, we know y'all are working extremely overtime in this price. They haven't offered them any incentives, any, not even a pat on the back or anything. It's just kind of like, we'll bring in these 4 other guys and you guys don't have to work so hard, but that's it. There's no, where's the appreciation for your workers? Because those people didn't have to do that. Those 2 guys.
Kind of sounds slightly like slave labor.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
that's where we're kind of
egregious too. It's so egregious too, because those people who lived in the community and were definitely armed. They've definitely went through this. The whole thing is just, it gives me like Veolia vibes of how Veolia went into Flint, right? Or how and the same with trying to privatize and regionalize the water here in Detroit. It's all like, and it's the same players, it really is. And I'm gonna look into it, because I'm pretty sure that there's got to be somewhere where they keep that list of the people that, or the companies that are wanting to privatize that water and be a part of that.
Yeah,
but it's got to be somewhere.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, I would think. So what's the call to action here? What can people do to help the whole community? What kind of actions can people take right now to do that?
So now, in the stage of where we're at now, it's pretty much a political, legal battle at this point. Of there's local progressive groups. I know one at the Water Collaborative. We worked with Cooperation Jackson. We did a fundraising event for them in October, and we've sent out supplies and donated money to them. And we've worked with them, and they're doing a lot of they have a list of demands. The people of Jackson, we don't want our water privatized. They've done a lot of picketing and protesting at the city council meetings and stuff like that. So that's the best bet, is to invest in the local organizations that are doing a lot of the on the ground work of going to these council meetings, petitioning their mayors, their governors, a lot of open letter writings. The Water Collaborative, I work for, we're on the People's Water Project Coalition, and we did, as a coalition, we did an open letter to Jackson's governor, Tate Reeves, about denouncing water privatization. So that's what I would say for anyone who's wanting to know how exactly can I help out. It's not as, because of the stage of where the process is, it's not as easy as sending supplies or donating money to specific orgs. It's more funding the movement. Yeah, it's more funding the movement. And that can just be through, just getting more people informed on the issue. There's a lot of people. I talked about it in the email I sent out that you've seen. That it's because they're out of the crisis and immediate danger of there's no news reporters to come in and take photo ops of people lugging
Right.
cases of water and reporting people's dirty water coming out of their faucets. All the attention is gone like that because it's not as sexy and sensualized as they like to show things in the media. So, a lot of people, it's like an out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
You know,
see that with Flint now too.
always with
That
Flint.
people don't
People
hear
go in.
news, and so they're like, "Oh, Flint's all fixed." And then when I meet people, I'm like, "No, it's far from resolved in Flint. It's just
Not gonna be
not, as you said, newsworthy to the lions that push out this distorted narrative anymore." Because of course it's always the community's fault. And it's never the perpetrator's fault, as we see here in Michigan with our governor. And I think it's just very important that we connect these issues. And I personally would like to ask what we, as the People's Water Board Coalition, can do to support what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, so I would definitely say, I know we've done a lot of work with Cooperation Jackson, but and it's not. I know this is kind of when situations get to the point of where now it's a legal battle, it's more of a movement thing. A lot of people kind of fall off because they can't really pinpoint, well, how can I get involved? And it's kind of more of a, well, this is that community versus their local government kind of fight. And what I say to people who like kind of feel like that, or you're kind of just in that gray area of how can I directly help in a meaningful way, is we just have to be more informed as grassroots organizers, just being aware of each other's situations. The fact that I personally, I work for a nonprofit and I'm a college student, and I'm born and raised in New Orleans. I have family in Jackson, Mississippi. I had no idea that like this was such a long-standing issue, and that's like a skip and a hop down the road for me.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was going on. So I say it's just to be more informed,
Which is going to be really helpful to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's true that now we love Cooperation Jackson, worked with them throughout the Mike Brown era through Black Lives Matter on quite a few things. They were in these streets and they organized. I also, the Mississippi Poor People's Campaign is doing a lot of really great work. They are trying to figure out, what that, fight the policies, but also help in communities and look at that mutual aid, those types of things. So those are two places, and we'll look for other places that are grassroots, and we'll paste them in the comment section down below for our listeners, so that they can go directly to these places or these sources that are doing direct work and doing the important work. And so that's the call to action, my friends. Find the organizations that are on the ground that are doing the direct work and help them out.
Perhaps we should plan a caravan or a regiment of PWBC members to go to Jackson, Mississippi.
I mean, certainly direct aid and mutual aid is needed. So whatever that looks like. I hate to go to a community without being like really invited, but to me, if we come together, especially there's so many crises, right? So water injustice and crisis is we're just knee deep in it every day, all over the world. We're seeing it every day. We get phone calls and have these conversations on different fronts, right? So all of us coming together really, really is epically important at this moment. And what that looks like, we really got to figure out. It's important, yeah. I feel like we could just sit and talk to you, Keree, for another hour. And I'd like to have you back on as things progress. And I feel like we made friends and collaborated. I just absolutely loved talking with you last night and learning to get to know you and all the great work that you're doing. Thank you for that work. It's epically important. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for going on this journey with me every week. To our listeners, look out for each other, call on each other, help when you can, and try to stay afloat together. Bye.
Bye.